Welcome, low ego action heroes. This is Debbie Levitt from deltacx.com. We do all kinds of things. You should check it out. We do training and projects and holy cats, just everything. Welcome to Office Hours. Ask Us Anything. We're going to bring Dr. Nick in just a moment. But let's go through our usual thanks and hellos and good afternoons and good mornings. I am in Dallas, Texas, staying with a friend. Hopefully, she will dance through the background at some point, but she's working from home. She's off in another room, and I am at the dining room table. So, special thanks to super friend LaTanya for letting me freeload at her place for a good week and a half. Good morning. Well, it's good morning from Dallas. It's 11:30 in the morning. Good afternoon, Ian, who I believe is in Dublin. Is that Dublin, Ian, or a different Ian? So let's, of course, quickly press all the right buttons here and thank the people who are donating to the channel in small and large ways. Current donors, past donors, future donors. Thanks to everybody keeping me in chocolate chips and streaming software, though this week it's mostly cheese. I did fly to America with a good kilogram of Sardinian cheese to keep me company. So I am happy to have a little bit of home with me. Okay. Remember, hi Malika. Remember, we are going to be taking your questions, and we'll stay here until Dr. Nick can't. You can send in your question anonymously at deltacx.com/links. You can add it to the chat room. We do have 5 questions from people who've sent them in previously, so we'll start with those. But let's say hi to Dr. Nick while I also move these things so they don't go over his face. Dr. Nick, who and how are you?
I'm good, thank you. You guys know me. I'm Dr. Nick. I'm the noisy one on LinkedIn. Very much like Debbie and other of UX advocates. What can I say? You guys know me.
UX. Hashtag UX. Let me just check. I don't see any questions yet. So we will start with the ones that we got ahead of time. And the first one was definitely not a short question. And we do certainly welcome all questions, but this one really needs its own show. This says, oh, hold on. I can't see it. I'm on my travel laptop. How do you create a research report? Can you do a tutorial on how to go about it? This really sounds like something that should be its own show. So I've put it on my notes of lists of things to make a future show about. But let's give a short answer, Nick. What would you say are some key things you want to mention about doing a research report?
Cool. For me, I haven't written. Debbie and I were chatting about this before we came on camera. So, I haven't, and I was saying that I haven't done a full insight report, a proper writey down prose thing, type out stuff in like a Word document in 6, 7, or 8 years, in a long, long time. And Debbie was saying, conversely, her and the team have done one kind of this year, or in very recent memory. So, these are just different perspectives and different needs. And I don't want to steal Debbie's point. My point is that effort is a big deal, at least in my journey and the companies that I've been dealing with. If anything, if a report is too much effort, i.e. too much friction, you've got to read too much, it doesn't get read. And if it doesn't get read, it doesn't go anywhere. And then bad things happen, all of that stuff. So make it easy to consume, however that is. But as Debbie's about to say, it depends on the client. It depends on the needs of the situation. So that's my nutshell answer, as nutshell as I can make without robbing your point, Debbie.
That's totally fine. And hi to Lonnie and Steve. We've got your questions. Oh, I'm pointing the wrong way. We've got your questions on the list, but we already had 5, so just know we will answer them, just not right away. So again, the short version of my answer would be that the best report is the one that matches the needs of you and your team and your stakeholders. If you are writing long Microsoft Word or Google Docs reports and your team doesn't want to read all that, then you haven't made the right thing. If people like to see video clip montages with lots of little clips around a central theme, and you're just sending them recordings of hour-long sessions, You haven't given them the right thing. So, to me, the main thing to know about reports is you want to work with your team ahead of time, probably when you're still planning the research, to learn not only what questions do they need answered, which we can do in our famous quadrant exercise that I got from Helen Page, that we're doing on the show quite frequently. Hi. Hello, too. I always wanted to give you a Dutch pronunciation, but I think you're just Joel. I'm trying to remember everybody's pronunciations. Um, so again, best to just work with your teams and learn what do they need and in what format do they need it. Very often we're writing problem statements. Do you want a list of problem statements? Do you want an Excel sheet of problem statements? Do you want them prioritized by our opinion of priority? So the best thing you can do with a research report is have collaborated with your team and stakeholders to learn what they need to know and in what ways it would be best for them to get that information. That's really the best advice I can give in the short, lightning version. Let's put up the next question. Oh, Nick.
One final one. Okay, the one thing that all academics, because we academics write reports, papers all the time, there's a very standard way of writing that down. It's MRAD, method, results, analysis, discussion. And there are variants on that theme. But if you Google MRAD, or if you just keep that in your mind, and it doesn't matter if you're doing a PowerPoint presentation, method, results, analysis, discussion. If nothing else, you need method. Method. That's the one that's always missing from absolutely everything. Make sure method goes in there. Thank you, Debbie.
Okay, super. Thank you for that. Definitely helpful. Okay, next question says, where does accessibility testing fit in? Should that be part of the UT as well? I definitely have some
Oh,
strong opinions on this one. Nick, how about
yes.
you?
Yeah. Like yes and always kind of thing. um, accessibility testing shouldn't be a separate thing that is a discrete piece of work separate to user testing. Okay? People with accessible needs are human beings. Remember this. You're a human being. Everybody's a human being, at least the ones we're dealing with human beings here. The idea we're going to have special testing for a special class of human being, I find ugly and repulsive and just the wrong way of looking at things. The right way to look at things, in my humble opinion, is in a more inclusive way. You want to test your stuff that works for everyone, every human being. Some human beings have got different abilities to other human beings. It's just that simple. So your sample of human beings is pretty shitty if you've only got able-bodied people or able seeing or able this, right? That's totally ableist. So if you want a more representative sample, which is what we're always dealing with in research, you don't just want all white men. You don't just want people who can see perfectly. You want everybody, diversity and inclusion in our user testing. That's as easy as we put it. Just make sure you've got people with accessible needs in every sample. Just the way to go.
Yeah, and what I would add to that are some tips that Sherry Bernhaber gave in my new book, Customers Know You Suck. Let's see if my effects work today. Yeah, cool. I think she was chapter 13, and she is a great accessibility advocate and someone living with these things. I see a question coming in anonymously. We'll get it at the bottom of the list. Thanks for your patience. And Sherry reminded us that especially if you're testing dev builds, you don't want to test your first dev build on people with accessibility needs, like if you want people to use a screen reader or a foot switch device or something like that. Get all the common bugs out of your thing first. Do a round of testing on that dev build. This is more for QA than for UX. Before you hand it over to accessibility people, why should they suffer with something really buggy that's just now getting its first look? On the UX side, very often we're building prototypes that are just not very accessibility friendly. I certainly know with something like Axure, I can control the tab order of fields. So if somebody is not using a mouse and they're going to tab through stuff, I can build that into Acture. And so hypothetically, I could test an Acture prototype with someone who did not use a mouse and uses other devices. Could I test an Acture prototype with someone who's using a screen reader? I have to admit, I haven't tried it. Usually, when it comes to screen readers, I'm waiting more for the dev build. But that doesn't mean you can't test with someone with low vision, where they might magnify the screen or alter the screen in some way. So I would say that accessibility, like Nick said, is not something that should be an afterthought. It's not an overlay. It's not something we try to glue on later. We have to be thinking about these things at every step. And when we're doing usability testing, if you can bring in extra people, so you might say, hey, we really want to get 5 people from our segment or persona or typology or whatever it is, and let's also get 5, 6 people with different accessibility needs. That would be the best way to go, just to make sure that that is that inclusive, diverse group. So I think we covered that one. Um, let's see. We got a couple of old questions that I didn't answer in the past, but I think they're a little bit old and nobody's expecting us to answer them. So let's jump into another question we got ahead of time. Sorry, I'm in slow motion, everybody. Or maybe this is normal speed for me and I don't even know. Okay, so this one says, hello, friends. Thanks for the opportunity to ask a question. Thank you, friendly person. What is the difference between product strategy and UX strategy? Nick, do you want to jump on that?
Wow. Yeah, there's a lot to that. Uh, Give me a second to process that. You go for it. Go for an answer if you want, because I've got an answer, but it's not going to be that great. Go for it.
Yeah, sure. I'm just getting the anonymous question in, which wasn't anonymous, and getting in Joel's question at the end of the list. Okay, so this would be my take on what is the difference between product strategy and UX strategy. I think for many people, a UX strategy might be, how do we approach the UX work on the project? How are we going to roadmap our UX work? What is our UX plan for this thing? And some of it could be, what is the user experience of this? Nick, you want to jump in? No, you're agreeing.
No. I'm just agreeing with you on the UX strategy bit at least.
Especially since I think that is what NNG teaches, which again, you can agree or disagree with. I'm just telling you that I think for many people, you're going to hear that the UX strategy is how the UX department or teams map out the work that they're going to do, whether that's a roadmap or a plan or whatever, and strategically approach their work and solve the problems as best as we understand the problem being solved. Some people would say the product strategy is a kind of a larger umbrella over that. And again, I do think NNG teaches it that way, where the product strategy is what does this thing do? What user problems are we solving? What business problems are we solving? What are we prioritizing in what order? And what products or services or features or things are we going to be offering people? How do we prioritize those? And then road mapping the work to be done by all of the disciplines. So engineering might plan their sprints, UX might plan or roadmap their own thing, and product managers do whatever they do, since that seems to keep changing. So that I think that's what a lot of people say, and I think where I come in a little bit differently there is, I see product strategy as not just the road mapping and some of the things we say are the product manager's job or a project manager's job. I say the product strategy, it has to be much higher level. What the hell is this company doing and why? It's got to interact with other product teams. If we just have a product manager in a vacuum saying, I want to build this cool feature, and we're not dealing with all the other teams at our company, assuming there are other teams, this isn't a good strategy. To me, the more that we are looking holistically at the company, at the users, at all of the users' diverse customers' needs and things like that, the closer we're coming to a real strategy. Otherwise, very often what we call product strategy in bunny ear air quotes is really just a feature to-do list. And I think that that's sometimes lacking strategy. Nick, back to you on this one.
Yeah. Because I had a total epiphany whilst you were doing all of that. I drew myself a little picture as I do, right? Right. I started off down here with UX and product strategy, and I realized that UX strategy obviously informs product strategy. And then the epiphany was, holy shit, these are the levels. UX informs product and informs business strategy. And that's effectively how I think it works, or maybe how it does work, if you know what I mean. In that they've all got their separate things, like Debbie was saying. UX is the planning of the UX activities. That's it's the strategy. The product is the kind of the roadmap, the management of it, and the prioritization effectively. And the business is the direction of the organization. So each one helps the previous one get where it wants to go. So we're supporting one another. That's how I look at that. And that's why the product manager, incidentally, that's a really great way of describing the product manager's dilemma, because up here you've got your stakeholders and down here you've got your users, and they're caught in the middle. And that's a beautiful encapsulation or diagram of business needs versus user needs, and product manager being squashed smash bang in the middle. So give your local PM a hug. It ain't fun in there sometimes.
Yeah, good points there. And I think what Nick drew is kind of reflected in my chapter 18 material in Customers Know You Suck. So if you haven't checked out my book yet, please do. You can find it at cxcc.to/CKYS. You can grab it on Amazon and Audible, or for as little as $1 from my own website. So not the cash grab. Okay, hopefully that helps the person who asked. Let's jump on the next question, which says, "Hi, can you talk about this is from Lonnie, best practices for non-leading test questions for usability and tree testing?" Ooh, non-leading questions. Always a hot one. Nick, what do you say?
For usability testing, I find that more easier and more straightforward, and maybe that's just through practice. And um, because if it's a usability test, it's much more outcome, it's much more mechanical, it's much more observable. Whereas in a more discovery or generative type thing, it's a very different, very different situation. Just don't ask closed questions. You're encouraging people. I think that's probably the best way to put that. It's a mentality. It's almost like you don't want to touch them. You've just got to kind of nudge them without touching them, and that's through your language. And so it's really important how you do that. And obviously, I know you know about open and closed questions and leading the witness and all the various biases that come from that. I don't know what I'm trying to say here. I've never really had a problem with it, and I don't overtly think about it. And when I watch my videos back, I'm not doing bad things these days. I used to, but you learn from watching yourself back. Um, yeah, I don't want to waffle on. I think that's just watch your videos back. That's another great way to teach yourself how not to do it, because you will flinch. It becomes really awkward to watch yourself making sort of schoolboy errors. So yeah, that keeps you honest.
Yeah, let me add to that and let's see. Hi, Nicholas. We already have a whole list of questions, but we'll get you and Posteon? Posteon? Sorry, I'm bad at names, everybody. Hey, Ader, how's it going? You know what I'm going to ask you. Um, I'll get everybody on the list, but we're getting so many questions. We'll do our best to get to everybody, but Nick and I tend to give long and thorough answers, so we'll get to as we can. So the question we are working on now is still Lonnie's question about oh yeah, non-leading questions for
That was it.
usability testing and tree testing. So let me answer the easier one first, tree testing. For me, I try to make sure that I'm not using any of the words in the tree test tasks that will show up in the tree. So if you have a tree called course catalog, don't say, where would you expect to find the course list? Too obvious, and Nick can laugh at that, but So first, make sure you're not using any of those types of words where you are making it too clear where people should go. If you think the answer is somewhere beneath the course catalog, then you might say, where would you go to find which classes you might take? Classes, courses, pretty close, but at least it's not the exact same word and hopefully not too leading. But keep asking yourself, have I made the answer obvious in my question? So the leading questions are sometimes either making the answer obvious or they're telling people in which direction an answer should go. As for usability testing questions and keeping them non-leading, I never ask people to find a thing. Nick and I were just talking about this last week when we sat in a cafe together with the fantastic Malika. So one thing I never tell people, can you find this thing? What do you think of it? What do you think it does? Because in reality, we want to know if people did find the thing. So typically, I might give people, let's say you have a new tooltip that is going to tell people about something related to a course. And you're wondering if anyone's going to look at this tooltip. Instead of saying, find the tooltip and is the information helpful to you, which is completely leading, I would just ask people to do a task related to that course or finding information about that course. You're wondering if this is the right course for you, go. And they go through the prototype and you see if they happen to notice the tooltip, use the tooltip, do they need the tooltip? And again, I'm making this up. I know you're not necessarily building tooltips. Tooltips are considered not great UX. They're band-aids on a problem. But just as an example, I try to give people the task, the end goal of the task, and just see how they naturally complete the task rather than look over here, what do you think of it? Or did you notice this blue button? What do you think it does? I tend to find these to be poor usability testing questions. The more realistic the experience can be, the better the usability testing should be. But again, that goes with a good prototype. Figma prototypes are not going to be your best choice because they're really just click-throughs and people going through a path. Axure's always better. But I would say, and Lonnie, ask a follow-up question if you have one. And you can always contact me privately for more help. But I would say these are the most common leading questions that I see where you're kind of answering it for the person and you're saying, look at this over here. What do you think of it? Or what do you think it does? Or what do you expect to happen if you click this? Way too leading. Maybe they were never going to see that at all, and that's the data. Maybe the data is nobody saw this. Nobody looked at this. Nobody noticed it. Nobody cared. So sometimes what people think, oh well, then we don't have any data. No, that is the data. The data is nobody saw this, or they didn't find it, they didn't know it was important, they didn't need it. That is your data.
Yeah.
So thanks, Lonnie. Good to see you. Say hi
Honestly,
to the
I
team.
that
Oh, she said,
analogy
hold
of,
on, she's writing a follow-up. So if the goal, keep the task as broad as possible and observe. I would say yes. Give them the task and shut up. Which I say to myself, not to you.
yeah, it's more like the task can be whatever it needs to be, but your interaction, your nudge, you need to be very as hands off as possible in the way that you're handling them, right? And that's what I meant about nudging and shepherding kind of thing without actually touching. It's you're encouraging people gently to go to an area, to move in a certain direction without telling them or pointing them. And there's a real art to gently nudging folk with your language, and that's, I think, why I was kind of being a bit blasé about at the outset. You'll learn it as a skill. You completely will. You'll hear yourself say, "Can you find the tooltip? I mean, actually, if I see you're having trouble with that. Can you find anywhere on the page where you might get help with that?" You'll just that becomes part of your patter, like
Yeah, or
habit.
sometimes if people look stuck, I would ask an even more general question. And sometimes people say, I'm not sure what to do next. And I say, well, what would you try?
exactly that.
don't even say where would you get help with that, because even to me that's a little bit leading. Though sometimes we slip up and we might say that, but I would even say to someone, "What would you do next?" Because sometimes people say to me, "I'm going to close this. F them." And so I don't even want to. You remember, a leading question normally assumes a possible outcome or a user selection or a user preference. Like for example, someone said to me, the friend I'm staying with, her 12-year-old niece the other day was like, "Do you speak only English or English and Italian?" And I was like, or something else. Those are just two things. Hey, Joel Bar, greetings to you. I have a call in 5 minutes. Well, good. Hopefully, it's job related and good news for you, Lonnie. I hope that helps. I might jump to the next question, but you can always find me privately if you need more help. This says Debbie. I saw your comment about no boot camps or classes in UX were worthwhile. That being said, what is worthwhile? Okay, so this is directed at me, but Nick, do you want to take this first and talk about, are there any UX boot camps, programs, classes that you think are worthwhile that you're comfortable recommending to our lovely audience?
Obviously, there's the content that you and I produce, right? But that seems super duper crazy biased and a real kind of self promotional thing. Um, Honestly, no. I totally agree with Debbie. If she's saying there's no good boot camps or UX stuff, I haven't seen anything good either. So I agree with her. The best people that I've seen in the past 12, 13 years of practice are the people who have just done it lots, in different contexts and had lots of experience. Experience is the way forward on this one, unfortunately. And that's the bit that nobody wants to understand. They can't accept. The people that are going faster than your peers that are competing are the ones that have accepted it and are learning. The people that are still fighting against it and still clinging on to old principles and trying to shoehorn them into UX, they're missing the point and they're just delaying their own careers. That's the bottom line. Yeah, it's really messy. It's been a big land grab and a big cash grab opportunity rather than a big knowledge transfer. And the knowledge transfer is what's much more important. And those of us like Debbie, myself, Darren, Joel, friends of the show kind of thing, we all know what's going on and we've not been complicit. We've been, we've held our own, but what we have is valuable and people are trying to steal it or make it up. Do you understand? What they've made up doesn't perform. It might sound good, it might look good, it doesn't perform. Real UX is a very high performing practice. So yeah, get out there and get experience. That's that's the hard, uncomfortable truth. Go learn and stay learning.
Yeah, I can't disagree. I'm going to take a different angle on this one. My feeling is that while I don't like a lot of programs and courses and boot camps and even university degrees have been kind of crappy at this time, I think what I would recommend is find the people who you like and trust, and that's it, like and trust. Maybe you like Dr. Nick, maybe you like me, maybe you like Darren or Larry Marine or other people who've been guests on this show. Go go poke around their LinkedIn or their website, see if they offer courses, because then you're taking a course or a workshop or a video course or a webinar or something with someone who you already like and trust. And we probably like and trust. Now, of course, some people have been on my show and I'm no longer recommending their stuff, and it is what it is. That's why we do hashtag not sponsored here. I get to change my mind because nobody's paying me. But I think that, Dr. Nick and Dr. Ari are doing a course right now. I haven't taken it, but it's probably good. And Larry Marine is doing a workshop. We're doing it next week. Larry is doing next Thursday, May 18, and I'm doing May 19. We're doing it live in Denver, Colorado, but we're doing it as hybrid, and tickets are still available. You can find it at cxcc.to/space. SPACE. You'll see the link to Larry's, or you can get my space workshop. I'm already planning some July ones in different time zones. So that's the longer version. So take the longer version of space if you can wait for July. But Larry's is only next week. So he's a great person to learn from. If Darren had a course somewhere, I think we'd feel comfortable recommending that. Stuff like that. So, hey, Dr. Ari, always happy to shout out to you. So let's see. Joel says, not saying it's useful, but a boot camp plus a psych degree gave me a foot in the door to gain experience. And I've seen that too. I've seen people with psych degrees who then do boot camps were getting jobs 2 and 3 years ago. So, Joel, was this like 2 years ago ish? Because I'm seeing it less now, mostly because of the economy and the layoffs. Because of the layoffs, we now have 50,000 highly qualified UX peeps, in some
Mhm.
cases, taking jobs under what they should be paid just to have a job. And so that's making it even harder for the newbies to get in. Yeah, Joel says correct. Nick, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, Joel, and for anybody else that does have that's a really great point about psychology undergrad. Um, I noticed this a long time ago. The long story short is UX psychology. If you look on YouTube, there's a video called An Introduction to UX Psychology. Around 2016, 2017, I couldn't understand why psychology hadn't developed as a thing in the UX world, because UX is all about human behavior. Um, if you have a psychology undergraduate degree, I think your value is going to be massive moving forward. Watch the video to find out why. If you don't have a psychology undergraduate degree, that's no big deal. Pick up an introduction to psychology textbook, like an undergraduate first year textbook, whatever is recommended on the reading list at your local uni or whatever. Hilgard and Atkinson is one of the classics. Read that. Fantastic start, and you'll get everything you need from that. Absolutely brilliant. Or a research methods book and read the first two chapters, and then when it starts getting all statistical, forget it. Good. That's it. Sorry, Dev.
Fantastic. Okay, we've got a couple of questions that came in anonymously, not anonymously. So let me adjust the font size and get them online. Okay, Carla Maria, good to see you. Catch you later. Okay, this is from Zhengyi, and he says, I'm designing a quiz function for for Japanese learning by read app. Oh, learn by read. Okay. Now there's a different opinion on whether to make quizzes or tests in Japanese or in English, the user's mother language. What's the best approach to research what's better for users? Well, I thought they're trying to learn Japanese. Why would you quiz them in English? Nick, help me here.
You just read my mind. I was literally just trying to process that thought when you went Nick. I was like, yeah, I it does not compute.
Yeah, I
Sorry, I
think
don't want to.
so. If I can jump in on this, I think what I would say is, um, obviously there's a certain point at which people have zero proficiency in Japanese, and maybe you want to ask them some really, really basic questions like which character means car, or which stroke comes first when drawing this kanji. Then okay, that might be in English because the user is at like toddler level of Japanese, and you can't ask them the questions in Japanese. They don't even know yet. But I think that if people are starting to learn that stuff, then you start dealing with them in Japanese. And that's certainly an experience that matches my world learning Italian, which is I started with nearly no knowledge of Italian other than singing operas, and my Italian teacher deals with me 99% in Italian. And sometimes I have to say, I'm sorry, I didn't understand that, but she'll explain it in Italian. And so I think the question is, oh, hi, new person from Nigeria. Um, so I think that if it's really, really basic stuff and they can't read Japanese yet and they're not going to be able to answer the question, then maybe it's in English. But if they are already at even a beginner level and could read a quiz question in Japanese, then it goes in Japanese. Nick, anything to add to that?
No, but my initial thought is this is that there's definitely a huge linguistics component to this that goes way beyond UX in terms of the pedagogy or the how do you learn language, acquire language, and then which order and at which developmental, which kind of learning stages do you do what like mother tongue or when do you, all that fluency stuff that is not I know nothing about, but I think you do really well to consult a linguist or somebody for whom, you know what I mean? That's a bit more of a really specialist angle to your user testing or research.
Yeah, and Zhengyi is here, and he says, "My coworker said Japanese question is hard to read and makes it hard. The English question is simpler and less overwhelming. That's what Duolingo does." Again, I would say we don't have to rip off Duolingo. We don't know if Duolingo is necessarily doing the right or best thing, and you have to do what's best for your audience. And again, I would go by what I said. If they know enough Japanese to understand the question being asked, then the question should be in Japanese. It's the language they're learning. If they don't have that, or maybe as Nick said, your pedagogy has decided we're teaching you Japanese by mostly speaking English to you, then that's your choice.
That's how I
So
learned French.
you learn French by someone speaking English to you?
Yeah, I went on a French exchange to France, and the guy's dad was Scottish, and he was so delighted that there was somebody English in the house to speak English to. I spent the whole 2 or 3 weeks just speaking English.
Oops.
Sorry, good times.
Thanks to all of the questions that are coming into the chat right now. I'm getting them on the list. I am worried that we're going to be out of time, so we might have to press pause on additional questions because there are so many coming in. But we're going to jump to Clement's question. I apologize if I didn't. Hey, it's Latanya dancing through in the background, just like Pierre Mario usually does. Hi, everybody. I'm in Dallas, staying with one of my best friends, Latanya. Thank you for hosting me and letting me freeload. And she's an amazing dancer. I think she just couldn't resist. So we're going to throw in Clement's question because it's kind of a follow up to an earlier question. I'm going to take it out of order so that we can get this question. And it looks like this. May you please explain why did you consider that a question like what did you expect to find by clicking on this button? Is it because you consider that you zoom on this feature asking the question? Nick, do you want to talk about why what did you expect to find by clicking this button is very often not a good
Yeah,
question?
yeah. This is the argument, and it's a strong argument why you shouldn't use Figma to prototype, at least in its current iteration or version. Um, in user research, there's self-reported and there's behavioral, i.e., if I want to know something about a person, I can either talk to them, hold a microphone up, or, you know what I mean, I can actually talk to them and they'll actually tell me stuff, or I can watch them doing stuff, right? And that's kind of the cornerstone of psychology, like self-reported or behavioral. When you ask a question like that, what did you expect to find by clicking on that button? You are asking somebody to self-report on something which should be behavioral. Okay, what that means is you're asking them to invent a fairy tale. Like, what would you do? What would you happen if you opened the cupboard into Narnia? It's what would you do, and that you're going to get a whole variety of answers. What people say and what they actually do are usually poles apart, right? And that's behavioral versus self-reported again. Um, so, what do you expect to find by clicking on this button is could be true, could be accurate, and it might be complete fabrication, and you've got absolutely no idea, which is why we don't do that stuff. Sometimes you might have to do that stuff. Okay, I'll be brutally honest with you. I've had to test InVision, XD, some horrible
Bad
prototypes which are
prototypes.
doing exactly this. I've been
Right.
in that situation, and you have to do it, and tough shit. You make the best of a bad situation. But trust me, it's crap. I don't want to put my name to that. You're paying me money and you're giving me that. I've got to do it. It's what I've got to work with. But it's a horrible, bad place to be. Try to avoid it at any cost.
It stinks. Old Mystery Science Theater 3000 joke. Yeah, if I can add, hi Vanina, haven't seen you in a while. How's it going? Um, Yeah, if I can add to that, the part of the problem is we're drawing people's attention to something that they possibly didn't care about, didn't see, don't need, not part of their task, badly designed, etc. So, for example, if I say, um, and this is a bad example, but it's the only thing I can think of on short notice. Um, what do you think I'm drinking today? You might be like, I didn't even notice you had a cup and you're drinking. And it's like, okay, well now I'm bringing your attention to the idea that I have a cup and I'm drinking something, and now I want you, as Nick pointed out, to form some sort of opinion about it or make a prediction about it. And you just have people making up stories, as Nick said. And so I think the reality is it's so much more interesting when you find out people never saw that button, didn't think of it, didn't notice it, didn't need it for their task. Sometimes you design the hell out of something and you watch people do a task and they never even touch the thing you designed. They found some other way to do the task. And again, that is the data. That's not a mistake. I have people who ask me, "Well, they never touched the thing. I have to change my task to get them to try it." No, that is the task. That is the thing. Maybe what you designed wasn't the right thing or wasn't necessary or whatever. So don't start adjusting your usability testing tasks to what you're hoping to see. Now you end up on the end of Dr. Nick's, bat. So don't make him come over to your house and hit you with a tennis racket. And so Vanina's asking, what is a better question? We actually talked about this a little bit earlier in today's show, but better questions are really just to give people the end goal of the task and let them do whatever is natural for them. Obviously, that implies that you have a good, realistic prototype where they can follow the path they want to follow. You can't just give them a Figma happy path prototype where you can
Yes.
only go you can only do one thing per screen, and people can't do whatever they wanted to do. And that's what, like Nick said, where sometimes you're stuck going, well, what would you have done here? Or what do you think that button does? These are, in case of emergency, top up the air in your life vest kind of questions. These are not our plan A questions. Um, so, yeah, thanks for that great follow up question. We snuck it in, and I hope that helps. Nick probably has something else to say before I paste the next question in, just
No,
knowing Nick.
I'm all good.
No, okay, you
I
got
think we,
me.
I think we smashed that one.
All right, awesome. Okay, we're going to ask the next question. I'm adding them as fast as I can, everybody, but they sure are coming in fast today. And I saw we also have an anonymous one coming in my email. Vanina says, yeah, but it's true that it's hard in the prototype. You only have a limited number of options. I only have a happy path. We don't have time or resources to do more. That's where you have to talk to your manager, talk to other people, and say, I'm not able to do my best work. I'm not prototyping the right things in the right ways because I don't have enough time. This skews our usability testing, which skews the outcomes of our usability testing, which can then skew what we put out into the market that we think it's better than it is. So, hey, if you would like me to continue prototyping um, the least the doing the least prototype, which you might think is fast but is ultimately foolish, then okay, we can do that, but let's make sure that we've documented this as a project risk. It's a project risk that we are testing an incorrect prototype, an incomplete prototype, a prototype where you can only do, it's like giving someone a hallway from here to here and going, okay, figure out this maze. It's not a fucking maze. It's a hallway straight to the end. So, and that's ultimately what some of these incomplete or incorrect prototypes are. And that's why that wouldn't make a very fun maze.
But
An
also be
escape
aware,
room with an
guys and girls.
unlocked door.
But be aware. But be aware. Um, this isn't perfectionism or gatekeeping or and people saying perfect is the enemy of good, right? This is none of that. This is about basic validity and you know not doing checkbox work, right? That's the biggest thing here. A lot of I'm going to leave it at that. Otherwise I'm going to go off on a whole different kind of rabbit hole tangent. Yeah, make sure your research means it. That you've got to have a level of quality assurance to it, right? And if you're asking people to construct an answer, and that's what you're doing when you're saying, what would you do? You put all that any validity or confidence or whatever you want to call that reality at risk. And any product manager or whoever you're delivering this work to isn't going to be happy with fairy tales. They might look good and they'll be happy on the surface, but if those fairy tales turn out to be fairy tales publicly at a later date, that's not good for anybody.
That's right. Short-term fake wins, long-term super noticeable problems and losses. Okay, jumping to the next question. This question says, oh, now I forgot where it is. Okay. How would you structure an initial workshop with target users 8 to 9? I'm thinking card sorting and trying to get out tasks that would be crucial to the designs. I don't understand this question. What are we workshopping with users? Who asked this?
Thank you. Yes. So that
I'm
that's
not
the
mad
bit
at you.
the bit
I'm just
thing.
trying to figure out, did this come in anonymously or did this come in?
Like, what are you trying to find out here?
Oh, it's
That's
Joel.
like a
It's Joel
pretty
in the
important
chat.
thing.
Joel A. Joel. Joel, I don't get it. What are you trying to learn here? And why are you workshopping with your users? I don't get this at all. I'm confused. Yeah, Joel, that was you. Yeah, and just so Joel, while you fill us in here, Steve says, I guess that's the argument for using something like Acture over XD. Yeah, absolutely. To me, I love Acture, hashtag not sponsored. I want to see people using more realistic prototyping tools, so that our design work is better and our usability testing is not automatically flawed and kind of garbagey. Um, yeah,
But
so
do you
we're
know
we're
what?
gonna need more from Joel on this one.
There Azure isn't ideal either. It's from a prototyping standpoint and from a yes, it's tool of choice, no question, absolutely unbeatable in the market, unchallenged. But in terms of designers, UX, UI, other people who aren't old school UXs coming to use it, and Figma houses and all that kind of stuff, Azure doesn't fit in nicely in its current shape. That's the real problem here. So it's not all everybody else's fault. Azure needs to meet everybody else halfway, and it ain't.
But they came first, so, and we know that their CEO thinks a certain way about things. So they came first, and I don't think their CEO believes they have to play nicely with anything else. So, these are business decisions. Joel says, I was given the task, the workshop, and participants have been set up. Yeah, but what are you trying to learn? I don't understand what you're trying to learn. It's great that you have participants. Hopefully they were recruited correctly. It's great that you're going to meet them. It sounds like you're going to meet them all at the same time, so that is usually not my top choice. That's a little bit more focus groupy, and that's going to suffer from groupthink and a dominant personality like mine fucking it all up and other stuff. So, but Joel, what are we trying to learn? What's going on in this project that we need to bring people together? What do we want to know about them? This would lead to initial design and mock-up. Do we understand these people's problems? What problems are we solving for them? Do you know? Or is this workshop aimed at trying to understand what their problems are? And who set this up? And I don't. I'm Nick. I'm lost here. Is it just me?
No. You're right, Joel. I think Joel's confused on a few things,
I
and I
don't
don't
think
want to be
Joel's
critical, Joel.
confused. I think somebody at his job is telling him what to do, and they haven't picked the right method for the job.
Yeah, okay, that's a really good point then, Deb, because what happens is we often get thrown solutions instead of problems. Like chuck me problems, not solutions.
Yeah,
Yeah, if
exactly.
it's a workshop about understanding problems, card sorting isn't the right thing. It's very
No.
much the wrong thing. Um,
Yes. Yeah,
yeah,
Joel says I'm
exactly.
lost too.
Okay.
That's why I'm asking. Yeah, so this doesn't
Yeah.
make sense, and I would definitely be speaking to my manager about this. Like, if you want us to understand user problems, you can't just book me a mystery workshop with mystery people. Where's the research planning? Let's see. Do I have this overlay ready to go? This one maybe. Oh, sorry, I forgot to make it see-through, so you can't see us right now, but we'll come back quickly. Where's the research planning? What are we trying to learn? What are our goals? Who are we going to recruit? Why are we recruiting them? Do we have the right people? How many people should there be? And do we want to meet them all at the same time in one room as you're doing? Usually not. What are we asking them? Questions, tasks, etc. And then how will we analyze that? So I'll take this off the screen. So that's the thing. Research requires proper planning and all these steps. And so often companies that don't understand that, and Joel, you're welcome to play this for anybody at your company if you're comfortable sharing, that people just say, well, we got to figure out users' problems, stick a bunch of them in a room and give them a thing. Do a workshop, right? Isn't that what cool companies do? They do workshops. But the problem is the workshop has become this panacea of we think that whatever we need, it's a workshop. It's just the new snake oil. So ultimately, Joel, the best way to learn what a user's problem is to watch them doing the task in their real environment, in their real life, which is probably not in your office in a workshop. And whatever this is, Joel, are you comfortable telling us like what industry this is or vertical or topic? And Shweta will put your question on the end of the list. We're still helping out Joel. And everybody remember that we are usually delayed about 40 seconds. So, once I ask the audience a question, I have to wait at least 40 seconds for the answer. Um, we have a wild number of questions and only an hour left. So I'm going to put up a no more questions sign today. So give me a second. Let's see. We're going to say no more questions today.
Joel, just to illustrate what I was saying previously about self-reported and behavioral data, you've got a thing that you want to learn. I don't know what it is, but it doesn't really make any difference. You can ask people, you can sit down and do an interview with them and talk to them, right? And say, how do you find that thing? Where does it hurt? Or, where's the pain points? Or you'll script it a ton better than that, right? You'll find out the needs and pains that way. Or, as Debbie's saying, you can go watch a place where people are doing this thing and watch them doing it. You can either do that in an interactive way or a more ethnographic, hands-off, fly-on-the-wall kind of way. But you're watching people doing stuff. That's behavioral. So you can see how people do things without your involvement whatsoever, right? And so that's... Now, ideally, you want a bit of both, because one can lead to the other and one corroborates the other. And Dr. Ari talks about corroboration all the time. Hi, Dr. Ari, big shout to you again. Point being is the method should match the question, your research question. Okay, when somebody gives you methodologies, try to uncouple it and say, right, what am I asking? What's the research objective? What's the research question? And then what's the best method to go and investigate that? And from my perspective, it's always behavioral, but that's a bias, and everyone's got their own opinion on that.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And hello, Hari again. And Joel is saying the task seems to be data collection and eventually visualization. But again, it sounds like you're not even totally sure about that. So ultimately, I would be, let's imagine that this has to do with people collecting data from different sources and trying to see some sort of information related to the data that they've collected. But we often think that the end of the task is the visualization of data. It's not the end of the task. The task is usually whatever people do after seeing the visualization. What action do they take now that they've seen it? Do they have to report to a superior? Do they have to collect it for a PowerPoint slide? Do they have to press a big red button and stop the world from melting? So that is, even visualizing the data is not the end of the task. So I would want to get people to, I would want to go to them in real life, or if this can be digital, have them share their screen and say, walk me through how you do this now. Every single step. How do you know you need to find this data? Where do you start? So even before they go into their Excel or Power BI or wherever they're going, How do you even know you need to look for this data? What happens in your workday or workflow that you even need to know this and learn about the full end-to-end task? Thank you, Joel. And so that's what I would be working on. I don't want them all in a room. Playing pin the tail on the sticky note. I would definitely want them individually where I can watch them in their environment or have them share their screen if this is digital and have some questions and learn that once you do that, you can do your task analysis, which you can learn more about in our micro lessons playlist. And then you can map out where does this go well for users? Where is this not going well for users? Where do they have to collaborate with others and that goes well or that's a mess? Where do they need approval on something? Where are they reporting up to a superior? So these are all of the questions. Did they need a visualization or do they just need an export? Some people don't want the visualization. They want to export it and do what they want with it in Tableau or something else. So again, there's nothing we can do to bring people into a workshop that's going to tell us what their problems are, because even if you bring them into a room and say, what do you wish our software did? Or tell me about your problems, you're assuming that people understand their own problems. And I think very often people don't. So it's all skewed in a lot of different ways. Um, Nick.
Just a quick reference for you. The jobs to be done stuff that gets completely overplayed and misinterpreted. If you look at the milkshake example, look up milkshake jobs to be done. That's talking about true intent and using genuine user needs and getting to the heart of the problem, and that users maybe not solving their own problems in a way, and you not interpreting that problem in the right way. Just go ahead and watch it. If you haven't seen it, I can't remember his name. Brilliant man. Go watch it. Great stuff. Essential viewing.
Thank you for that. Chad's here. Good to see you, Chad. We've got a great turnout today.
Hello, chat.
Ideally, they're showing you how they do the thing in the environment that they typically do the thing. That's
Yes.
right. We used to, when I worked at Macy's, we used to have the lab where we brought people in, but that's not the best representation of how they shopped online at Macy's because they used their own device in their own home with their own equipment, with their own setup, with their good or bad internet. So, these things can be okay, but there's still some imperfections there when you're not seeing what people do with their environment and their equipment. So, there's a lot of things there. So, Joel, I would say there's really not that much that you can do with that in person workshop. I would probably be canceling it and seeing if I can meet these people in other ways and trying to do a better research plan to make sure that we know what we're doing and why. I would do a quadrant exercise, which we keep talking about on this channel, which is just to have your whole team and possibly some stakeholders put up on a Miro board guesses and assumptions, what they think they know, what they wish they knew, possibly outdated information. And this could be about users, their task, your technology, the universe. Some questions will be out of scope, but when you see what unanswered questions people have, it will help you plan the right research to answer those questions. We're going to do a show soon specifically on the quadrant exercise, but probably in June when my travels are over and I'm sitting in front of the green screen at home. We got another question from Zhengyi. This one's a little bit twisty-turny, but let's see what we can make sense of here. For a complicated function, for example, a node editor which requires line connection or any function that can't be presented by a prototype software, what do you make redesign on it? How do you test it? Is this only testable after development? How do you approach this problem? So, Nick, what I hear here is how do you test or prototype something that is quite technical and feels like it can't be prototyped?
Yeah. Okay. So I haven't seen much that can't be prototyped in Azure, and that'll be pretty. I've seen some people do some pretty crazy, inventive, innovative stuff in Azure. Azure is remarkably powerful. It doesn't perform particularly well when it gets to those levels, like memory, and it gets jittery, but it does some pretty crazy stuff. So in terms of your node editor, where you need to get nodes and auto find the bit in the middle, I think that's all doable, but I think you'd have to do some pretty fancy scripting or definitely some pretty complex Azure. That said, you probably, on this case, if you have the opportunity to work with development code in a staging or test server, that's 100% a better option. The reason why I say that is what I hope Deb's going to agree with, or I hope she agrees with. if you invest too much time, yeah, all that pressure on me now. If you invest too much time and effort in an Azure prototype, you might as well have actually built code. There comes a point, there's a tipping point where your prototype is just too chunky, right? Or it's just too complicated. And even I've worked with some really complicated prototypes, and they're a nightmare to work with. Small changes become, nested dynamic panels, and some really scary, horrible, not easy stuff to manage. And you'll lose your mind, and I did, and people do. Um, so that's why working with code or a cut of it or something that's got your fancy function in it to try to test that specific stuff that you've got. If that's at all in play, possible. I would probably start with something Azure and a bit simpler, and then move up to a level of code when you've got something coded, and then go with levels of code from there all the way up to kind of alpha, beta, live. That's roughly how it would go.
I am going to agree with this. And so basically, everybody knows I love Axure and I want to use Axure for absolutely everything. But once in a while, I've had a client who wanted something prototyped where it really didn't make sense to do it in Axure. I'll give you an example. I had a client who had this screen that had so many numbers on it. It had to do with some sort of financial trading. I don't even remember. This was so many years ago. And they wanted us to do it in Axure. And at one point, we started building it and they paid us for it. And then at one point, the guy goes, "Oh, and by the way, I want to be able to click this button and everything on the screen changes to yen and is written in Japanese." And I said, "Oh my God, the amount of time it would take me to build in Axure doesn't feel worth it, whereas I know that would actually be much easier in real code." This is one of those cases. I think in many cases, building in Axure is faster and easier than writing real code, but this was one of those cases where I knew writing real code was probably going to be faster than Axure. And so in that case, I advised that client, like, "Thank you for what you've paid us so far, but unfortunately, I didn't know this was coming. This probably shouldn't be in Axure." And so and I, I'm not as familiar with Framer or some of the other ones that compete against Axure, but I tend to feel like these are all in the same bucket, that for the most part you just end up needing to lean on developers when it has to be that realistic and can't really be faked out well in Axure. I haven't seen Axure be bad with memory and jittery in about 3 years. I think for versions 9 and 10 they've really cleaned up a lot of that. I was coaching someone in Axure a couple of years ago, and she had the heaviest prototype I'd ever seen. It was the biggest repeater feeding into a second gigantic repeater on the same page, and it took about 20 seconds for the page to load. It was blank, and then it all popped up. And it was pretty much the heaviest Axure prototype I'd seen, but once it loaded, it performed well. It just loaded unrealistically long. So let's see. Johnny says it'll be too straightforward and apparent if you build a prototype on it. Not necessarily. Sometimes a UX prototype is the right way to go. Ultimately, even a dev writing code is still technically a prototype. You don't have to see it as a finished
Mm-hmm.
coded thing. You can say this is a dev prototype and just remind
Yes.
everybody that this is still in the design phases, but because of the level of realism that you're trying to achieve, you need the developers to prototype it rather than UX prototyping it. I mean, this is what we did before we had cool prototyping tools. The developers had to build
Yes.
some version for UX people to test. And Vanina says, so your advice is just to test on the QA environment. I did that once. We got very interesting data. The problem is to convince the stakeholders to change things already developed. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Vanina's totally right. That is a common problem where people feel like, well, we built it, so let's just ship this. It must be good enough. And they don't understand that it's not in a dev QA phase, it's in a UX design and iteration phase. And that's going to take a lot of good communication and teamwork to make sure people understand that just because it's coded, warm them up early for the idea that this is going to need changes. We are going to learn that there are flaws in this. There are going to be changes. This isn't done. Thank you for that great reminder, Vanina. Oh, UAT is not equal to UT. Yes, I
That's the
agree.
misconception. They think that this thing at the end of build is, which you do have, which is a separate thing called user acceptance testing. Do not let anybody confuse it with user testing, or that user testing showed a thing and therefore, well, it's the same as UAT, ship, blah, blah, the stuff that Debbie was saying. You need to uncouple that. That's one of the first misconceptions you'll find at a low low maturity place.
Okay. And changing your thing there. Okay, next question. And Nick, you can stay another almost hour. It's not going to interfere with your Ari adventure.
Now, me and Dr. Ari go on our adventures about 8 o'clock my time, which is about an hour and a half.
Okay, just let me know when you got to go and we'll wind up. I think this one says when you are initiating a new marketing client as a consultant or firm, how do you quickly level set or navigate discussions around CX versus site UX versus brand activity?
Hang on, processing.
I know, I feel the same way. Boop bop beep. Say what? When you are initiating a new marketing client as a consultant or firm, how do you quickly level set or navigate discussions around CX versus site UX versus brand activity? I have to tell you, my gut response to this is your client might not care. You might be throwing lingo and terms at them that they don't care about. So I guess I would be asking, are we sure the client cares?
Yeah. What does level set mean in this context?
I am not sure.
I
How do
think it
you
means you
level
said the
set?
like
How do
level
you
playing
navigate
field.
discussions around CX versus site UX versus brand activity? Uh, I, it's hard for me to answer this because I don't know what type of work this is. I mean, it says a marketing client, but it sounds like you're doing something on their website. It sounds like you're doing something with their brand. I can't really tell what's going on here. I think this is, choice D, not enough information to answer this question.
Yeah, and part of this I can get hold of the CX versus UX bit because I can understand that what the intention of the question is saying is how do I set my relationship with my new client around customer experience offline, the site online user experience. I'm just trying to interpret here versus, I guess, brand activity being marketing activity, like advertising.
Let's
Um,
see.
I
Nicholas says it's around defining the role of UX when approaching marketing directors rather than product managers. Why do you have to define the role of UX? What is the
can imagine
work?
that.
I want to worry
I
more
can.
about what the work or the project is because sometimes I find that the client doesn't care what role did this. They just care what rate they're being billed. So, I want to play devil's advocate here and say, who cares? Let's pretend I'm asking who cares. So I assume Nicholas is typing, but
I bet you
yeah.
he's having
And
trouble
who
with.
are we defining the role of UX to? Is this an internal battle, or do we need to define the role of UX to the client? The client might not care.
Nah, I think the client's probably very marketing driven and isn't seeing the value of the UX end of the spectrum.
Yeah, that's when I tell people that you don't necessarily have to parade the word UX around when people don't get it. You can sometimes say, hey, this is UX. This is the user experience of the site. But really, let's think of it as our total quality program. We're going to make sure that as
Hmm.
we're working on your site, we're really looking at the total quality of it, not just the quality of our marketing efforts, but also the branding efforts and those user experiences. The user friendliness of it. That's a term lots of people understand, even if they don't know UX. We want to make sure your site is user friendly, easy to learn, easy to use, and also has strong branding and marketing elements. And I sometimes don't necessarily try to school those people on the intricacies of UX. Johnny says, I'm still lost. Nicholas says, no, Nicholas didn't say anything new. Nick, go ahead.
Do you know what? When you said user friendly, I got all cringy for a
I
second.
know,
I had
it's
a
a little
little kind of
cringy.
had a bit of a nasty reaction to that one. And I would actually, what I would say is I think in 2023, I know Debbie didn't actually mean it, but like, be careful how you use the word like that, user friendly, because it can sound really wishy washy and just garbage, right? Like
Fair
no
enough.
value, right? What I'm saying is just talk in terms of performance and value and business objectives and KPIs and OKRs if you have to, if that's their language. But you understand what I'm saying, business lingo.
Yeah, I've had to navigate this with a few of my clients. They heard they want UX, but they don't really know what that is and what are we really doing and isn't this just web design? And I always have to with those clients I have to figure out how much do they want to go to UX school to learn what I do. And that's where I tend to throw out more general terms like it's my job to make sure that this is easy to learn and easy to use and intuitive for everyone who uses it regardless of language, disability, diagnosis, location, whatever. So I think the question is: are we trying to define the role of UX internally or externally? You might find that you have problems internally where your coworkers don't totally understand what you do. If this is an agency, they might not be estimating enough time for you. They might not really, they shouldn't be estimating your time at all. They should be making sure you are collaborating on those estimations. Nicholas says, I'm basically asking how to approach someone who does performance marketing and they do lots of work with their site team, but becoming an advocate for improving their media to customer experience. I feel like I still don't get this. Nick, help me here.
So I was just writing my last thought down, which was UX is a sustainable way of making money. That's what you tell people,
I like it.
right? Because
Yes.
it, that's
As
what
I
it
always
is.
say,
That's what it ultimately is.
risk mitigation, business intelligence, and customer intelligence. I'm going to read out loud what Nicholas has wrote. You help me out here. He says, I think he's he, no offense. I'm basically asking how to approach someone who does performance marketing and they do lots of work with their site team, but becoming an advocate for improving their media to customer experience intersection, and there is some education involved, and I'm trying to develop language and talking points framework.
Help.
I think you're gonna have to contact me privately about this one because I'm not getting it, and I think I'm having a good day. But I would say, you can always sign up for a free coaching session with me where we can have a conversation about this, and I will give you all the free help that I possibly can. So you can just go to deltacx.link/coaching. I think most of the rest of my month is blocked out because of my travels. If you're really on fire, maybe send me a message through our Slack community. It's free to join our Slack community, deltacx.com/links. Um, yeah, Shweta says, I feel like you just answered the question. If this is the language they use, but what you think of as UX, the activities matter more than the terms. Nick, what's your sign say?
My sign says macro and micro, right? This is for you, Nicholas. You want to explain to your marketing people macro is marketing, micro, for want of a better term, is X. So up there, high up, looking down on the world is marketing. And down here at the user level is user experience. Okay. So you're looking at the needs of the market and the features of the market. We're looking at the needs and the features of the audience, of the people.
All
Hope that
right.
helps.
Sorry, we might have to move on just because I'm not totally understanding. Sorry, we didn't do better on this one, but thank you for your patience. And hopefully, we'll hear from you offline, off the YouTube universe. Okay, next question looks like this. What do you rely on when time constraints don't allow you a window to properly do your homework, and as such, you must get straight into design? Genius
It ain't home.
design, Nick. What do you say?
It ain't homework, right? It ain't homework, right? That's the first thing I want to say. It ain't bloody homework. But there are times where you don't get an opportunity to do any kind of research, even guerrilla, rapid, anything. Okay, shit happens. Pragmatic life. We get it. It's fine. I've done this too. Go straight to wireframes because back in the day, that's what we were told to do: was go straight to wireframe because we've cut out the research bit and all that good stuff. Um, it's very far from ideal, and in some innovation projects, whatever. Let's not go down that rabbit hole. Okay, the point is sometimes it happens. Just user test it at the earliest possible opportunity. Bottom line. Okay, that's what keeps me honest. Keeps me going. You can't go far wrong as long as you're testing stuff, at least user testing stuff. Well, or testing stuff in general. You just can't. So if you had to get straight to wireframe, you do not know the needs of the users, you do not know the pain points, you don't know anything about your audience, and you're just drawing stuff because you've got somebody telling you to do that, okay, but you're going to find this stuff out pretty damn pronto the minute you start testing it. Well, one would hope that you will. It's all less than ideal.
Shweta says this is a common interview question that she gets asked. So I guess like, hey, what happens if you don't get all the information you need and there isn't time to do boop bop a beep and you have to go straight into design? How do you approach that? According
But
to Shweta, this is a common interview question.
but this is all sounding very waterfally to me, right? Like we've got to do this thing and we're never going to get a chance to do it again. And if you're not on the bus, it's gone. Bye bye research, toot toot. It doesn't work that way, okay? We should be doing research as BAU, as a business as usual activity. We should be doing it sprint on sprint, or at least regularly within sprints. You see what I'm saying? So the point is okay, you get straight into design, you haven't got a clue what you're doing or what the audience is, you're using best guesses and hearsay and everything, some sellotape, but then you test it, and then you test it again, and then you iterate it with the knowledge, with the insight that you've got from the testing, and welcome to the agile world. This is how we build stuff.
Yeah, so I would have to agree pretty much with the things that Nick said. Unfortunately, there are many projects who want you to work from no evidence, no knowledge, no input. Sometimes all we have is a survey that says, people like our idea. Which of course is probably garbage. And so, yeah, Shweta says it all comes crashing down at the first test
Yeah,
if they
hell
let you
yeah.
usability test it. So yeah, I've certainly done these projects as well, and normally I'm just advising my teammates of the risk that, essentially you are asking me to guess what people need and guess what this should be and create this without good evidence or data. And so I will do my best to create something that's good, and we'll need to usability test it to see if it is good or how it can be better. And if they go, no, we don't need to usability test it, we'll just, put it out as an MVP. Then I'm saying we have to document all of this as risk. All of this is a wild amount of risk that it is a guessing sandwich. We're guessing what people need. We're guessing what the design is. We're guessing that we can just build it and get it out there. This is a guessing sandwich, and we only get away with this shit because companies have no accountability anymore. If the project or product manager could see their budget cut or their team disbanded or their project, their career ended because of this kind of disaster, people would be more careful about this stuff. But while nobody's held accountable for anything, why the hell not?
Word of danger. MVPs, that when Debbie said MVP, I was like, trigger, trigger, trigger. Because what often happens is that MVP stays live. It stays in whatever it went live in. MVP was just an excuse just to ship the thing and to put it live. And it never really gets any support, any ongoing development. And then you've just got this terrible bad thing, which isn't really an MVP, but it's live. And it's what you were able to get live. That's the reality of modern software development in many cases. It's the MVP represents what you could do under a very complicated set of circumstances. I used to call it phase twoism because they'll say, yeah, we'll do it in phase two, because phase two never comes. That's a really big thing. So don't know why I'm saying that, but just be aware of the use of the word MVP, because sometimes it can be used to put things to basically like call it done, call it quits. Like, yeah, fuck it, pardon me, we're done, put it live, and that's really bad.
Yeah, I've certainly seen that. I am no fan of the MVP, and I think people know. All right, thank you.
Oh,
Next.
I am
Oh,
when it's a real MVP. It's just getting that definition is super rare. A real definition.
I'm okay with an MVP if we do it during the UX process. Our MVP is a UX prototype.
I'm
Um,
with that. Totally with that.
Next question says,
Haha, I
um,
got yes.
what are your advice and best practices for surveys? I know what you're pointing at. I just see a long arm. Nick is
No, that was me trying
dancing.
to do that was trying to do my Usain Bolt kind of lightning bolt thing. Doesn't matter. I was just dancing and being a dick. Don't do it. Hooray!
Yeah, I
Mic
was
drop,
gonna
walk
say
away.
one of my best advice is don't do them. Nick, go ahead, you first.
Yeah, kind of don't do them. I mean, listen, you've got to do them, and people you end up doing them. But the survey is kind of, well, it seems to be like a market research go-to, which isn't true for UX. It's self-reporting, and we talked about all self-reporting versus behavioral earlier, so it comes with a whole bunch of it ain't validity concerns. um, Surveys can be very, very useful and at an appropriate time of a wider investigation, just not as a go-to thing. What else about surveys? I generally hate them, and they're the last thing that I ever go to, because I'd much rather use behavioral data wherever ever possible. Um, Now, when are surveys a good thing to go with? Okay, let's say you're at a really big company, which many of you probably are, and you're multinational or multi-territory. Um, Surveys are really good ways of taking a hypothesis and testing in it, getting data on it, basically at a wider, greater geography or territorial thing. Okay, but that's because you worked up to it through a whole bunch of other activity. You haven't gone straight in and started asking a survey. You've done a whole bunch of behavioral stuff. You've got some hypotheses that you think are good, but you want to test them a bit wider and at scale, which means you can't do user testing on them all because the volume is massive and you haven't got the team for that. Do you understand where I'm going with this? Okay, it's about an appropriate use of a tool, of an instrument, and an appropriate time of an investigation. Um, Other thing I would, big top tip, when you do have to use a survey, can I swear, please?
Oh, usually do.
Oh, good. Be fucking militant about the number of items that you have in that thing. Okay, how long it is, how long it takes. Nothing kills a survey, even a well constructed one, more than length and effort and friction. And yeah, make it short. And when I say be fucking militant, I mean look at every item and be bloody sure that Dave or Mary in marketing haven't just asked you to put 5 questions in there just because, and all of that stuff. It's your survey, you're putting it out, it's your data, it's your analysis. If people put shit in, you're going to get shit out. So you have to guard that thing with your life. Okay, don't let other people shred it up and just jump on board, jump on your coattails. There was one other thing about surveys. Yeah, just make them short. Oh yeah, last one. The difference between an amateur and a pro is pilot testing. Don't, for the love of God or anything that you believe in, just construct some kind of survey and press the go button to 5,000 people on your sales force list or whatever crazy shit people do. When you make a survey, write anything, you don't get it right first time. I don't get it right first time. Debbie, Ari, no one gets it right first time. The reason being is because it's going to go out to lots of people, and people interpret things differently. That means they read different things into it than what you intended. You don't want to find that out after you press the go button, because you cannot unfire that bullet. Okay? I've made that mistake. Most people made that mistake once, and you'll only make it once because you'll cry. It's horrible. It's sucky. It's a bad, hard lesson to learn. You don't want to learn it. Pilot test surveys when you have to do them. That's me and done on surveys. Sorry, Debbie.
No problem. I'm not even sure what I could add to that. I just tell people my usual answer is I like surveys for screeners so that I can do recruiting and find the right people to include in a survey, but that I generally don't run many surveys because I find that they're not actionable. You know, sometimes people say, "Oh, I've got this great survey. We're going to ask these 10 questions and it's really going to help us know what to do and what to build." And I say, well, let's say that we find out that 72% of people answer the third choice to this question. How will that affect what we do? Will it change our strategy? Will it change how we prioritize? Will people know what to design because 72% of people selected the third choice? So I just start asking some of these questions. How will we change what we're doing based on the survey results that come back? And if people go, well, it'll be good to know this. And I go, okay, so you're saying it's not really going to affect strategy. It's not going to affect decision making or prioritization. It's not going to influence influence our design. If it doesn't, if a survey question or the entire survey isn't actionable and doesn't give us good evidence on which to take action, then I think it's generally not worth it. And especially because surveys are so often flawed and biased and manipulated, sometimes on purpose, and sometimes because people just aren't good at asking the right questions. But if you ask, hey, we're thinking about building boop bop a beep, would you like a boop bop a beep? 87% of people said yes. But what does that mean? They all envisioned something that they would like. We don't know what they're envisioning. We don't know their task or their workflow or their perspectives or their needs. We don't really know what to build. We just know that people said they might like a thing. And time again, we see news stories of companies that failed or went out of business or discontinued a product because they built the thing and nobody wanted it. So I think that my measuring stick for these surveys is what action will we take when the information comes back? It's got to be more than this would be interesting to know. It's got to, this is a business. We need to make money. We need to make informed decisions. What are we going to be able to do based on the knowledge that the survey would hypothetically bring? And if we don't know and we're giving fluffy answers, what are we doing? Do not bother. Okay, I think we have 4 more questions in about a half hour. We'll do our best to get through everything and then let Nick go to prepare for his Nick and Ari extravaganza. This says, for recruiting participants, this was Cherish, where travel is required to meet them. Our team books the travel first and scrambles to recruit shortly before travel. Any best practices on recruiting in this situation?
Wow, I don't. I'm that situation is not familiar to me. Usually, and also post-pandemic, it's such a different world. I think we have to talk about that just briefly. The pre-pandemic world, as Debbie mentioned earlier, we spent our lives in laboratories, in labs, in UX labs, watching people do stuff and travel and paying incentives and all of this stuff. Moray, no one ever talks about Moray anymore, right? Moray, which is the recording tool that most UX labs are all kitted out with. Um, this is like a pre-pandemic question, post-pandemic. Um, Pre-pandemic, my participants always booked their own travel, and we paid them incentives or covered their expenditure to get to the lab. Doesn't seem good to kind of put a gun at your own head and book the travel and then say, right, let's find someone, because recruitment is, and you ask any UX person, recruitment's always a pain in the neck. It always is. It just is. I don't know why it's never easy. I can't help you, man. I'm sorry, whoever asked that question. I'm thinking I'm just fluffing at this point. I don't know. Sorry, Debbie.
Hey, it's okay. So I think that what I try to do in these situations is the downside is when you're booking travel, if you haven't done the recruiting already, you're assuming that whatever city or place you're going to, someone's going to have time for you. And that definitely requires more conversations up front. Cherish says the reason they do this is because they're afraid if they book the customers too early, they'll forget about the interview. Nobody forgets about an interview they're being paid to do. I think that I wonder if there's an incentive here, whether that's a credit on your company's bill or actual cash in some form or the gift card version. People rarely forget about that, but which one is worse, the people forgetting about it and you're in their town and you go, oh man, you can't make 2 o'clock, how about 4 o'clock, let's just see you later, oh yeah, great, or going to their town and then hoping that you can get their attention. So I would still be trying to book these things way ahead, and not way ahead, but I mean, it depends on how far ahead your company is trying to do this. If you're trying to buy the cheapest airfares, you have to do this a month ahead of time. That doesn't make sense. You're just, if these are airfares or that type of travel, you just have to understand you're going to pay for last minute airfares, and maybe you want to try to book them next week or the week after. You want to make sure it's in their Google or Outlook calendar. You want to make sure they're getting multiple reminder emails. Hi, don't forget we're meeting next Tuesday at 4. I'm coming to your office. If you need to reschedule that, please let me know as soon as possible since we are coming in from Utah. Um, Hi, it's Friday. Don't forget we're coming Tuesday. Hi, it's Monday. Don't forget we're coming tomorrow. Hi, it's Tuesday morning. Don't forget we're coming after lunch. It's just going to take a lot more management and communication, but I think it's better to arrange that up front and make sure you're going when these people can see you than to show up there and all of a sudden be like, we're in town. Who can see us? But Cherish, let me know if I can help at all with anything behind the scenes. Now, someone sent in a really long thing anonymously and started with reword this. Newsflash, I'm not going to reword your question. I'm going to read it out as you've sent it to me. If you would like it reworded, please send it to me reworded. I don't have time to edit y'all's stuff, okay? So I don't know. I don't know what that is.
Like, do I look like Chat GPT?
Hey, I like that. Yeah, maybe that was a GPT prompt. Okay, here's what it says. Reword this. I am a user researcher and I've been working in UX for about 10 years. So I have a good idea of what good UX is and isn't. Right now I'm struggling with a difficult stakeholder who is a designer. They have done
Mhm.
research in the past and always push back on research plans or suggestions that I or anyone on the UX research team presented to them. After seeing their previous research, it was incredibly evident that the research they conducted was put together to validate their own designs. How would you handle something like this? It's especially difficult because they're a very influential person in the org with a type A personality.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Tippy toe on eggshells time. You love this stuff. Evidence, evidence all day and every day. That's what I do, right? I'm going to do evidence. But what you're not going to do is pull evidence out. You're going to go and test this guy's stuff and you're going to get the real insight, okay? That isn't about validating their ideas. It's about finding out, does this thing work or as intended or designed or what have you for the intended users. Um, but what you're not going to do is go to the company show and tell or demo or town hall and go, hey, Mr. Designer's work's a bit shit, and here's why. No one liked it. Here's why. Here's some footage. you know, you're obviously going to make him look really bad. It's not going to go down well. What I would do, and again, I'm not the most political of people, but this is the way that it's worked for me historically, is do the work anyway. Renegade UX, right? You're doing the right things respectfully, but without necessarily with permission. But once you've got the insight, that's absolute dynamite. And you do that you throw it in the wrong direction, you're going to cause a massive fire and an explosion. So you need to have a private meeting with this chap or chapess or person and say to them, look, this stuff came out in the work that I was doing. I just want to show this to you. Even better if you can come up with solutions or suggested pivots to say to kind of mitigate the impact. Okay, this isn't about calling your baby ugly. It's about saying there I can make your baby prettier. Something like that. Okay, it's about how you spin it, and that's effectively how I do it. And that's I'm an evidence-based person, and low effort evidence with the right meaning and no not throwing people under buses does the job.
Yeah, and I think that ultimately this is a power struggle. So, looking back at the question, which I have in a larger font in front of me, sorry to everybody about the small font, it sounds like this is a difficult stakeholder who pushes back on research plans or whatever the UX research team suggests. And my question is, why is this person driving the car? This is disempowering to you. This is basically someone saying, sure, you got hired for your expertise. You're the researcher, but I'm going to tell you what research to do and what research to not do. I've worked at these companies where product managers, product directors, VP of product have decided they want to tell researchers how to do research. Today I want a survey. Today I want interviews. Today I want this. And I want interviews, and these are the questions you should ask. And this is a process and culture problem. This is where you're going to need to go to your manager or someone in power and say, we have a process and culture problem. I am a fully qualified UX researcher. You hired me for my research capabilities, talent, experience, knowledge, education, whatever it is. And I've got this stakeholder who thinks they know UX research better than I do. And it doesn't matter if they did design in the past or tried some testing in the past. It doesn't matter. Any stakeholder can think they know UX research better than you do. I've seen engineering leads who think they know that better. I've seen product people who think they know better. So to me, it almost doesn't matter that this person is a designer and has done crappy, flawed research in the past. So I would say this is a conversation to be had with your manager and say, look, I'm on a project where I'm being undermined. I know how to do this. You hired me because I know how to do this. And when we put forward what we want to do, we have a stakeholder saying, no, 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 do this other thing. Help me here. This is bad for culture, bad for morale, bad for process, bad for the project. The project requires the research that I'm suggesting. I don't want to do what a non-researcher is asking me to do. It's my job to select and recommend the right research. How can we improve our processes? And some people say, well, I don't have a manager that I can go to have that conversation. Then maybe that's not a place that you want to stay at. Maybe this is a place where you are looking to leave and you are applying to another job. And when you leave, you will tell HR, I am leaving because despite having been fully qualified for this job and gone through 6 interviews and two challenges and a portfolio review and whatever, I have a non-researcher teammate who tells me what to do all the time and blocks me from doing my best work. And that's why I'm leaving. Here's my exit interview. Maybe you don't want to replace me. Maybe you don't want researchers at this company. Maybe Mr. Wonderful Stakeholder wants to do this himself and show how cool he is. So I think that you have to bring in, this is where I don't expect someone to necessarily fight that battle because people are generally afraid of stakeholders. So if you're afraid of taking on a stakeholder, Nick and I probably aren't, but if you are, and that's more common, we're the weirdos, then you have to bring in a manager's help. And hopefully, you have a manager or a skip manager, your manager's manager, who maybe does have your back and understands that you're not being allowed to do your best work or possibly your job at all. And that's the conversation that you have to have. And sometimes I start those conversations with, I'm being set up to fail. And I tell you, that gets my manager's attention every time. The managers who care. I've been lucky to have managers who do care. When you have a manager who doesn't care, then that phrase is meaningless. But when you have a manager who cares, I'm being set up to fail is a sentence no manager likes hearing, and they will want to help you. So good luck with that. We wish you the best. We got a couple more questions, then we'll let Nick sail away. Let's say you're a mid-level UX person entering a startup or a situation where a new product. Oh, I forgot to put it up on the screen. I suck. Hold on. There we go. Let's say you're a mid-level UX person entering a startup or a situation where a new product is being created. There are no available users. The product is non-existent to interview or help test prototypes. Users of similar existing products are, for whatever reason, specialization, rarity, classified roles, difficult to find. How would you go about validating experiences without them, or how would you acquire qualified specialized users? Think brain surgeons, Air Force pilots, drug users, etc. Nick. And we got 2 more after this if you have time.
How come you're in a situation where you're building product with no access to the users who are going to use it?
Agree.
That's what immediately springs to mind, because if you're saying at the bottom there, think brain surgeons, Air Force pilots, even ultra high net worth individuals, you know what I mean? They don't have to be that, you know what I mean? But people who is traditionally really difficult to get hold of, if you're in a startup or something, yeah, a startup, there you go. Is this a kind of startup that's doing the kind of entrepreneurial work on behalf of an audience that have never had any interaction with? Because that's red alert all over the shop. Right? And you're pretty much describing every kind of UX tool out there because somebody non-UX has gone ahead and built it. um, Drug users don't love admitting to drug use. Oh, sorry. Okay. So it's a toughie, this one, actually, because it isn't just about, build something and then iterate, because it sounds to me like you don't have any access to any of these highly qualified specialized users, in which case, what are you doing in business right now? Or what are you even, is it that genius and you're so sure that the target audience needs this amazing thing you're building? Or is it so technically unique? And I don't get it. So sorry, Deb,
I also don't get
over to you.
these buckets. Like, I don't know how one company is building one thing that is for drug users, classified airline pilot, classified what? Military pilots testing weapon systems, cardiologists using tools during operations. Yeah, Schweitzer says, I'm wondering why the startup has decided to solve these problems, and especially with what sounds like potentially little or no knowledge of these people and their day-to-day needs or tasks or workflows. We have to find these people. Now, in some cases, we can find these people with enough money. A cardiologist might be part of an interview or testing session, but they might expect $300, $500 because of how they value their time. Some drug users might admit to drug use, but I don't know how you're going to validate that they are a drug user. And I don't know if they're going to be on a drug while doing this, and maybe you want that and maybe you don't. Classified pilots and weapon systems, it sounds like you are building something as a government contractor for the military, in which case you should have access to related military people who are going to be the end user for this. It wouldn't make sense for the military to contract with someone to build a thing and then say, we're not going to give you anybody you can talk to. We're not going to give you anybody you can, whatever. This is not really a thing. So I think that, first of all, sometimes these people can be found. It just takes time and money. But second of all, there shouldn't be any excuses. Yeah, Shweta says for a drug user, maybe a rehab center. Do you want an ex-drug user? Do they have to be actively on drugs while you're talking to them? What is the task? Ultimately, this goes back to we think we can solve a problem, right? Every startup is trying to solve a problem. I am not sure about the Venn diagram of drug users, pilots testing weapon systems, and cardiologists using tools during operations. That Venn diagram is not making sense to my brain. Boop, bop, beep. But yeah, there are always ways to try to find these people. Go ahead, Nick.
Oh, I think I came from the VC world back in the .com area, right? Some person has an idea. They usually go to convince a friend or family who happens to be a multimillionaire in VC to give them a lump of money, and then they go do some kind of discovery. Okay, sometimes some really, really poor ideas get a lot of money put behind them, and it gets quite far down the road before they find out it wasn't a really good idea. Sounds to me this could be in that area where you're working in a early stage funded startup that's on the basis of an idea, of a hypothesis from somebody who doesn't come from that practice or from that area, right? And so this is all hypothetical for a hypothetical audience.
I'm looking at this now. Pilots can't talk about competitor systems sometimes. This makes no sense. Why would a startup build something for, let's imagine you are building something for Navy warfighters. You're talking about classified pilots testing weapon systems. So to me, I immediately think the Navy warfighter. And how would you be solving a problem for a Navy warfighter if you've never met a Navy warfighter? How would you know what problem they have that you're going to solve? And when governments enter into long-term contracts with the systems that the warfighters use, why would you imagine that they're just going to drop whatever they're doing and start using whatever your system is? They might be in a 10-year contract with a third party to create their weapons systems or something related to the warfighter. Or when I think about the Navy warfighter team that I worked with in San Diego, they are the UX team. They're building their own stuff. They're not necessarily going out to outside contractors or outside systems. The people I worked with are they're building their own stuff for the Navy warfighter, and because they are internal to the Navy, they have some access to users, not as much as they like, but they have some access to the Navy warfighters because they have that level of clearance, and they can go talk to these people or watch some things that they do or see their Excel spreadsheets. I don't even understand how you would imagine. We don't know these people. We haven't met these people, but I bet we have something that they could use and that we could sell them. I can't imagine how hard it must be to be an unknown company and trying to sell something to the US Navy for a pilot using a weapons system, because that's the Navy, that's that's it. It's going to be your Air Force and it's going to be your Navy pilots. And how do you get a foot in the door there? That just doesn't make sense.
No, but it's not like anybody can just become a military contractor and just build guns and stuff, right? Weaponry. Um, you've got to be a licensed or you've got to be a military contractor. There's some, yeah. I'm sorry.
Hold on, we got a clue from something in the that came in the chat. The clue is yes, the drug user could be using a health monitoring tool while using drugs. So we now have the clue that this is a health monitoring tool. This
Okay,
assumes that a
so
drug user either wants to use a health monitoring tool, which I imagine is rather unlikely,
no, no,
or
no, no.
they're
It would
court
be.
ordered to use it.
No, no, no. I mean, I'm thinking of heroin users in particular. I know, I used to know some very, very high functioning heroin users. You wouldn't know they were heroin users. Normal, intelligent, very high functioning people, just with heroin habits and who care very much about their health. But they've got, they've got a habit they've got
But
to
that's a
maintain.
slice of a slice of a slice of a slice. Like, if you're making a health monitoring tool, do you go straight for war fighters, cardiologists, and heroin users?
Now, I think I get where Chris is coming from.
Okay, because I don't.
Not all drug users are crackheads smoking in an alley,
No, that's
or
not
you
what
know what I
I'm
mean.
saying. But I'm just saying,
No,
if you're a startup trying to create a health monitoring tool, you have picked a difficult target audience that is a slice of a slice of a slice of a slice. And if you're going to, the more niche you get, the more you have to talk to these people and observe these people. The more broad it is, if it's like, hey, any American woman could buy this thing. Cool, go for it. But the more this is super niche, the more you have to observe these people. Yeah, you're saying that is our
Chris,
slice. Yeah, then
think
you have to
think
research these people. You can't make guesses about them.
Chris, think about these people. There are levels to their addiction. There's, going up from rock bottom, right? Should we say, right? And maintenance and stuff like this. I hope you know what I'm talking about. Um, there are going to be people in different phases of their addiction who are going to be either open or willing to receive help or reach out for help themselves. And those opportunities are kind of few and far between, depending upon the addiction. Um, there are opportunities to get access to people who are still deep in their addiction, who have recently hit rock bottom, who are actually open and looking for a solution. Now, things like health monitoring may be in play. Maybe you need to work with a recovery unit or two to say, look, can I work with you guys? Or some fresh, some people fresh in to see, or people that you're doing outreach with
Or
through,
sometimes you go to the doctor. Sometimes you go to a GP
yeah,
and you say, hey,
or needle exchange.
hey, GP, do you have 4 patients who are active heroin, cocaine, heavy drug users who might be interested in talking to us about the health stuff? Will you reach out to them on our behalf? You don't have to tell us who they are. And they might say, I can't do that. Doctor patient confidentiality. And we go, okay. But there's got to be some way to find some of these people, whether through programs, AA or addiction groups. But again, there's usually a lot of confidentiality swirling around these, so you have to make sure you've spoken to these groups and ask their permission to uh, be a part of it or contact people or something like that. But ultimately, before we create anything, I would be researching these people and what aspects of their health you think they are monitoring, should monitor, have been ordered to monitor by a doctor or a court or something, because I don't, especially with such a niche slice, I don't want you to end up with we put out a cool thing that's based on a series of guesses, because I'm under the impression that at least in some cases the pilots have this stuff. So
Yeah.
I thought some war pilots were hooked up to some of this stuff. So I don't know.
Um, working with drug users active drug users comes with all kinds of ethical and safety and all kinds of additional risks, and we
And if it's
must say that out
America,
loud.
HIPAA compliance, because you're talking to someone about their health and medical records.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then if you're in America, they may well actually be armed and dangerous and all kinds of crazy stuff. So somebody who's got a gun and who's tripping their balls off is not really a brilliant person to be around. Um, you're also going to get potentially unreliable data. They're not going to attend reliably. Diary studies, you can pretty much forget any kind of completion rates on. There's lots and lots of stuff to this. Some people might even say it's a specialist kind of thing. Also, any hardware will probably get stolen or pawned or what have you, right? So there's that.
Yeah, and I guess
Yeah.
my
What
question
what
would
what
be,
would
what if I were at that startup, I would say, what is the easiest group to get to? Why don't we start with one slice that is easy to get to? And to me, that's the surgeons.
yeah, no, no, but in this drug addicts, I think that's what we're actually talking about here. Work with the recovery professionals and have them advise you how you might get safe access and all of that stuff. Use them as a proxy or as a trusted advisor. Don't go direct. That's
SME.
crazy. This is specialist stuff. You'll get into as much trouble, or harm that you don't want to do.
Well, originally Chris said it could be war fighters, it could be cardiologists performing surgery, and it could be drug addicts. So I'm saying, knowing that you have some sort of list of these slice niche people, I would just start somewhere. I would start with the most accessible slice of people, which of the three you've given us are surgeons. Surgeons are people who we can find and we can talk to. They're just going to expect a large amount of money to give us some of their time. They might expect $300, $500 for just to talk to us for 45 minutes or an hour. But to spend that money and talk to those people, you may or may not be able to watch the surgery, but spend that money and time, and talk to that person. Make your list of your strange audiences and pick the people who are most accessible. And from the three you've given us, it's surgeons. You can find surgeons. You just have to pay them very well because of how they value their time.
Or go to places that surgeons hang out, like conferences or conventions and places like that. That's always a good thing. Go to find a community of practice.
Yeah, all good ideas. So, Chris, hopefully this helps a bit, and good luck with the project and the startup. Hopefully they can find a real problem and solve it well, because ultimately that's what it's about. We don't want to guess what these people's problems are. Okay, we have a last question, and then we're going to let Nick go and have a life. Thanks, Chris. The last question says, what expectations can a designer who's relatively experienced have of their manager? What kind of support can we expect? Versus what should we be expected to handle autonomously?
Gosh. Okay, there's two major factors that spring to mind there. There's the level of the manager and your level, right? If that manager is like a true, genuine seniory type person, or is that kind of a hands-on manager that can provide you that or the kind of support that you want, great. It's but when and you're like an open-minded junior or midweight, you know what I'm saying? That's a great sort of dynamic, and things go really well. Expectations usually turn out kind of well at that point, but that seems to me to be quite a rare or low frequency situation, where what tends to happen is people are accelerated senior and they're with an accelerated kind of leader, and in which case the leader can't support the person who needs all the support, because they're feeling bad because they've accelerated themselves, and that's just a very common situation. Um, what sort of support would you expect? I the support I expect from a manager or a product manager or line manager is political support, because that's the stuff that I don't want to have to deal with. The support that everything else, I kind of want to be left alone to do my job. I want the manager to create the conditions for me to be my best self, if you know what I mean, to do my best work. That's it. If that means getting other departments to sod off, or you know what I mean, dealing with resourcing or whatever the stuff is, go get to it. Just protect me. have my back whilst I'm at the grindstone. That's basically what I'm after in a manager. That's what I think you should expect.
I totally agree. I mean, if you think about the number of times we say on this show, go to your manager, ask them this, ask them to back you up on this, ask them to help you fight for this, and then I have to say something like that assumes you have a good manager who's going to help you out. And so to me, the best managers I've had gave me a lot of room and autonomy, especially because they knew I had experience and they knew they didn't have to look at my work every 3 minutes. And then when I had a problem with someone within UX, outside of UX, above me, lateral to me, I could go to them because I trusted them. And that's really it. The manager has to build trust, and you have to know that if there is a problem or an issue, you can go to them and you can tell them the truth about whatever it is, even if some of that truth is I messed up and now I'm in this situation. And so to me, the best manager gives you the space that you need and gives you the oversight and help that you need. And the best manager, one of the best managers I had was at Macy's. Even though Macy's was a clusterfuck, my manager was awesome. And one of the first things he said to me when I joined was, okay, you have a lot of experience. How often do you need to meet with me? What do you need from me? Do you want to have a standing meeting? Do you want to be more ad hoc? And I said, yeah, I don't need to meet with you every every Monday at whatever. I'm sure your schedule is full. I'll just grab you if I need you. And that's what we did for 2 years. And that worked for us. And so I think the best manager, I always say, people say, what's your management style, Deb? They say in job interviews. And I say, my management style is called play to your audience. If someone tends to need a lot of feedback and support and talking and meetings, I'll give them that. If someone wants more autonomy and just wants to check in with me more occasionally, I'll give them that. Assuming that they have the level of experience. So that's what I think. I think a great manager caters to what you need and delivers that and always has your back and supports you, even if you are part of the mistake. Nick, anything else to add?
No, I think that's it.
All
I
right,
mean,
then we are outie.
ideally, the manager should be able to help you with roll their sleeves up and answer provide mentorship to the lower levels. That's what I would like to see people to do, because if that knowledge ideally comes from the top, it trickles down: manager, lead, senior, mid, junior. Do you see what I mean? It's just, if that's missing from the top, it doesn't tend to trickle down. And it's harder to attract decent seniors if you've got a kind of I don't know. I'm not getting into the leadership debate because some people are really brilliant protectors and you know what I mean, really brilliant at the management thing, and I really appreciate those people. And there's other people who aren't so great at that. Anyway, let's move on. Thank you very much, Deb.
Yeah, no, thank you. We are out. We closed off questions at the perfect time, so that is it. So, Nick, let everybody know where they can find you or connect with you.
Oh gosh, hi. Yeah, you guys know me. I'm on LinkedIn. That's where I live these days. But I'm super busy. Dr. Ari and I are delivering our course called The Influential Researcher, which is going really great. If you want to get on it, it has sold out. We've got a waiting list running for the next one, and it's going great guns. Other than that, thank you for having me, Debbie. Lovely to see you all. And I will see you all next month, same time, same place. Well, probably back in Italy again, but you know what I mean.
I will be. Yes, I'll be back in Italy in a few weeks, so Dr. Nick will be joining us in June. It's usually the second Tuesday of each month, but you can always go to deltacx.com/links. Check our calendar. Tomorrow will be group therapy day, so you can join us in what we're calling group therapy, which is our twice a month hangout. Thanks to people are giving us thanks. Thank you, Karen and Ader. So Nick, have a super evening. Congrats again on the success with Dr. Ari, and we'll see you in a few weeks. Bye.
Thanks for having me.
Customer centricity as business intelligence. Visit deltacx.com to learn why we are